Picture this. It's a very cool winter day in December. Your brother just picked up the Xbox 360 a few weeks prior, and he comes home bringing a certain game from the local blockbuster. Yeah, I'm showing my age. Yeah, we used to rent games at a store. We'd go there, have it for 5 days, bring it back in that time. Yes, I'm that old. I also remember the rise of Blu-ray and the forgetting of DVD. And now we're getting rid of Blu-rays and physical media. I want to die. Suffice say, my brother brought Condemned Criminal Origins, and I was blown away by it. It was scratching that itch that Resident Evil 4 had given me several months prior, and I ran Resident Evil 4 into the ground. Condemn scratched that itch. It was survival horror in a way that I'd never seen done before. And today I want to talk about Resident Evil 4 Condemned Criminal Origins. I want to talk about the story, the gameplay, and where I'd like to see an eventual reboot and or sequel can go from. So let's talk about Monolith Productions' underrated gem, Condemned Criminal Origins. I think what really drives the story of Condemned is none other than the main character himself, exceptional FBI agent Ethan Thomas. I was about to say Ethan Winters. I've been back on a Resident Evil kick here lately. I've been trying to get ideas for another Resident Evil video, but he sells it, and it doesn't help that the voice behind it is none other than Greg Gumberg. You know, Greg Gumberg of Felicity, Alias, my personal favorite Heroes.
Wait, save the cheerleader, save the world. Wait, hero, I don't understand.
Can you tell I'm old mentioning Heroes? I love that show. The first two seasons were great and then just kind of went off the deep end, but that's because a certain writer's strike happened. Also, he was in Lost. So you can't tell me that show makes any sense. I think Greg does a great job with Ethan's character. I think the story, honestly, is good for the most part. Ethan searching in the fictional city of Metro, to find this serial killer has popped up, the matchmaker, and stumbles upon one of his crime scenes, and ultimately gets caught up in a very dark, evil force that is destroying the city and ripping it apart, and stumbles upon none other than Serial Killer X, Leland Van Horn. You see, Serial Killer X, Leland, and Ethan are cut from the same cloth, while Ethan, with his unnatural gifts, sought to try to be better in the world. Leland could not keep the hatred and darkness in his heart from taking shape, and he thought the only way to rid the world of these evils is to kill them. It's to murder the people who cause harm, while Ethan wanted to do the right thing and put them behind bars. And that's how they cross paths. You see, Leland's been on Ethan's case for quite some time, going after every serial killer he goes after and killing them with their own MOs. And I don't know, it's an interesting dynamic of Ethan could have been this way if he'd just let go. He is framed for the murder of his partner, an FBI agent, and he gets to meet a very old family friend. Malcolm Van Horn tells him to prove his innocence, but also uncover what's happening in this fictional town of Metro. Ethan does. You see, Ethan wants to prove his innocence, but there's forces at work that want the cult, as it were. There's more of the cult in the sequel, but essentially the cult was using Leland. He got out of control and started getting thoughts in his head that he needed to kill all these people that were causing harm, and they essentially want Ethan because he's gifted. Through the course of the investigation, we go to the deep, dark depths of the metro tunnels and uncover more mystery that leads us into Bart's apartments or a derelict, rundown shopping mall. And we ultimately stumble upon the guy we were looking for, the matchmaker, killed by his own MO, but with a twist. Instead of a male mannequin, it's a female mannequin standing opposite to him, and that pushes us to go further, to look further into investigation and uncover more of the mystery. As they get to the library, Ethan is given a file that shows some very interesting details about him. He's got something different about his body. He can take more hits because of his stronger bone density. He can do things that the sequel, there's something. His throat is blacked out in the game, But in the sequel, towards the end, he actually uses his throat as its abilities. Pretty crazy stuff. Honestly, the sequel, as much as I don't like it, it really goes off the rails, and I think that's for good. Uh, and now we find out that Leland is going after all the people that Ethan went after as an FBI agent, all these horrible, deranged killers. And we find out he's going after one certain person next, and that is, of course, the torturer who tortured his victims to the point where they unalive themselves. We ultimately go into this old, decrepit, rundown school. I'm starting to see a pattern here with these rundown, decrepit schools. Ultimately, finding out that Leland got to the torturer first, and that pushed us to go to Appleseed Orchard. I can't say that word for some reason. My English isn't very good. I live in Alabama, and we're like 47th in education, if that tells you anything. We ultimately find the torturer who has unalived himself and come face to face with Leland, who is the cause of all our problems. I will say this, through the course of the game, we're hunted by this entity that kind of looks very similar to Ethan. He's got longer hair, he's got implants, he wields these two sticks, and he's a menace when you face him. He's an absolute threat to Ethan's existence, and he's constantly trying to get in Ethan's every which way to either kill him, stop him, we don't know, but he's constantly at Ethan's beck and call. And this, of course, all culminates when we have to hunt down the thing causing all the madness in Metro. Before we face off against this monster, we face this entity several times. We face him once in Appleseed Orchard, and I think 2 or 3 leading up to the point where we had to face this monster that's unraveling the city of Metro. And the only way we can access the Metro, or not Metro, the only way we can face off this entity is if we take the sticks and the dead crow that this thing chasing Ethan uses against us, which makes me think that that is Ethan if he would just let go and let loose and be so unbothered by morality and compassion, just be crazy and insane. Maybe, who knows? I'm just spitballing here. It's a very old game, so there's really no telling at all. We face off against the entity after a few waves of enemies, and it's a legitimate boss fight. We've had sort of mini boss fights with the entity throughout the course of the game, but nothing like this. He has 3 phases where we have to remove an implant from the shoulder, the spine, and the jaw, and it's a tough one. Honestly, playing through it the second time, I didn't really have an issue with him. Honestly, I had more issues with facing the guy with the entity that chased Ethan double six more than I had a problem with this guy, because it's all about finding and balancing how to dodge, how to move away, because combat and gameplay, the movement's very clunky, very classic, what early 2000s game, but after removing the entity's implants, we won, we survived, we stopped the chaos from happening and saved Metro, but at what cost? As Leland and Malcolm and Ethan are driving home, Ethan hears none other than Leland Van Horn in the back of Malcolm's car. Malcolm tries to reason with Ethan that he's not all gone and there's still a chance for him, which is funny because in the sequel, Leland ultimately kills Malcolm. And some people are just beyond safe, truthfully. Some people can't be saved, and Leland's one of them because he allowed the hatred to consume him. Ethan decides to be the better person and doesn't shoot him only for Leland to put a bullet in his skull, but the sequel proves that he very much stayed alive. Maybe at the behest of the cult, I don't know. Ethan is cleared of all charges. Rosa explains that he was part of the cult that's behind everything, and that's it. The ending we get is interesting because Ethan is in a bathroom, he vomits. Seconds later, that entity that had been chasing him the entire time shows up, goes in him, and we get this close-up view of Ethan with implants similar to that boss and entity that we faced towards the end. And it's fascinating. It's very interesting. Again, I think the lead up to that boss fight is probably the best storytelling wise in the entire game. You no longer have access to your tools. You no longer have access to the things that you need. You have a burnt 2x4 for the most part, and you have to face down waves of these monstrous enemies to get to the thing causing all the chaos. And I think that's where this game really excels, is that final level. I don't know what they had planned for Ethan, truthfully. I think personally that he was going to be the next big baddie for the sequel. I think he was going to be taking up the killings again in Metro, and maybe we were going to play as, with the help of Rosa. Maybe you played as Rosa, or you got to play as this new FBI agent trying to unravel the mystery of what's happening, ultimately to come face to face with Ethan. But instead, the sequel paints him as a drunk and destitute of society. I don't know, I like Condemned Criminal Origins. I think for the most part it's a solid early 2000 game. Again, it is a product of its time. It's a capsule of a bygone era, and I think Monolith cooked with it. But honestly, I feel like we talked enough about the story. Let's talk about that big, beautiful, thick gameplay. The story can be hit or miss, but I think where Condemned really excels at is its gameplay. I think the combat is varied. You have a wide range of melee weapons, you have a wide range of force multipliers, and they all have their own strengths and weaknesses. Some melee weapons may do more damage, but they swing a lot slower and can't block really well. Some melee weapons may do less damage, but they swing faster and they block better, allowing you to follow up with more attacks. And then there's some and what I really love about the force multipliers is they're few and far between, but there are plenty of them. But the caveat is that most of the time when you find one, they've got less ammo, and a lot of the time, the enemies you face have a force multiplier, and they can use it to great effect, which is why you use another tool at your disposal, the taser, to incapacitate enemies to take the force multiplier from them. That's another thing. I think the taser is pretty good. You get a second taser, and it does more damage and allows you to take on enemies a whole lot faster. But I think the combat is varied enough where if you don't like the story, you'll have a lot of fun with the combat. Another thing it does really well is the use of the FBI tools we have at our disposal. We have things like the ecto scanner that allows us to scan liquids or material. We have the UV light that allows us to see things only a UV light can see. We have a early 2000s digital camera, and that really shows you the product of its time. And then we have something that allows us to check for smells. You know, I really like the implementation of these tools, which is why I'm sad that we never got to use tools in the sequel, but I get it, it's a completely different game. But I think the use of the FBI tools is done really well. Another thing that I really like about this game is the fact that you'll come to an area, there will be a door blocked in your path that you can't access unless you have one of a few tools. Like you either need a fire axe, you either need a sledgehammer, or you either need a crowbar to get to the next area. Almost kind of similar to like those old games where you'd get to an area and you have to have an upgrade to whatever you're using to get to the next area, because there's something in that area that you can't access without getting this upgrade to your tools or something. And I kind of like that. I like that a lot. I think it's done really well. I think it's done to great effect. You know, the gameplay is, you know, I think is one of the strongest points. I think the combat is varied. I think the use of the FBI tools is done really well, and I really love everything about it. I really appreciate this game a lot, and I think it's done to great effect with what they implement, whether it's combat, whether it's the use of the FBI tools, whether it's the need to search further in the area to gain access to other parts of the level. And I think the level design is pretty good as well. Like each level feels like you're doing something in it, whether it's looking for FBI tools, facing the denizens of the level. You know, I think it's done to great effect, and I think it's one of the combat and the gameplay of Condemned Criminal Origins is its strongest aspect. And while the story can be hit or miss for some, I think the gameplay and the combat is where it really excels. Now, I wanted to say this for last, but, you know, I don't think we'll ever see a sequel to Condemned, which I think the only right way to do is go about doing a reboot. And the one thing they need to change absolutely is the enemies. it's just bad optics when you're facing homeless people and the denizens of, or the citizens of this fictional town of Metro. Uh, it's just not good optics. I should not be facing homeless people as my enemy, especially. Oh, sorry. As an FBI agent in a position of power, it's really bad optics. And I think if they were to do a reboot, I think a big thing would be to just have facing against the cultists, because the cultists is a big part of it too. You end up facing a few cultists, if I recall, in the sequel, and I think that'd be a good idea. I think having us go against the cultists that are making everything happen would be an excellent idea instead of us facing against homeless people, because it's just bad optics either way. If they were somehow to do a sequel, have it really lay heavy into the cultists, which they were you kind of do face cultists towards the end of the game, so it wouldn't be a bad idea if they really lay into it in a sequel of sorts. Honestly, I'd love to see a reboot. I think if we forego fighting homeless people and really lay into the cultist side of things, I think a reboot could do really good. Again, Condemned, it's sort of a niche franchise, but I think it's one of Monolith Productions' best games it's ever done. You know, they created fear. You know, they had the chops to create something memorable and lasting. And, you know, Condemned is lasting to me because I still talk about it almost 20 years later. I think it's a good game. I think it's a good franchise. And I think it needs to come back. I think a reboot would do wonders, maybe even a sequel. Heck, let Night Dive Studios do a remaster of the first two games and finally put the second one on PC. I think that'd be a great idea. It's never had a PC release. The only way you can play it is on emulators. And it'd get people, if they really want to play these games, a desire for us to see more of it. But that's honestly all I've got today. I wanted to praise this game for what it does for me, and I think it's a good solid game, definitely worth your time. But I want to hear from you guys. If you've ever played Condemned, tell me your thoughts on it. If you haven't, I highly recommend giving it a chance. Of course, if you enjoyed the video, hit that like button. It helps your boy get into the algorithm. If you're feeling super generous, maybe, just maybe, consider subscribing and turning on notification bells to keep updated when I post. So that's it. That's the video. I love you all. I'll see you all in the next one. Take it easy.